The guard at the mansion's gate recognized the sleek black Bentley immediately. Laila Ali, 28 years old and undefeated in the boxing ring, pulled up to her father's estate with determination in her eyes that masked a deeper worry. It had been 3 months since she'd last visited, and Muhammad Ali's Parkinson's had been progressing. The disease that had gripped the greatest boxer of all time for over 20 years was tightening its hold. "He's on the back porch, Miss Laila," the guard said with a respectful nod. "Been watching the birds all morning." Laila found him there, still as a statue, his once lightning-fast hands now resting motionless on the armrests of his wheelchair. At 64, Muhammad Ali's face had become a mask, the disease robbing him of the expressions that once captivated the world. But his eyes, those eyes still burned with the same fire that had stared down Sonny Liston, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier. "Daddy," Laila said, kneeling beside him and taking his hand. His fingers curled around hers with agonizing slowness, but the strength was still there. Before continuing, if you're watching this on your TV or phone, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching my videos from. I want to know how far they're reaching. Thank you. Muhammad's eyes shifted to meet hers, and a smile formed at an excruciating pace. That smile, it had always been her anchor. Through her parents' divorce, through her troubled teenage years, through her decision to follow in his footsteps against his wishes, that smile had been her constant. "I brought you something," she said, pulling out a scrapbook. "Found it in my storage. Remember this?" She opened it to reveal newspaper clippings from her early boxing career, headlines screaming, "Ali's daughter steps into the ring," and "Like father, like daughter." Muhammad's eyes crinkled at the corners as he studied the yellowing pages. The tremors in his hands seemed to quiet momentarily as he touched the photographs. "You were so mad at me!" Laila laughed, the sound tinged with emotion. "Told me boxing was no place for my pretty face." His head nodded almost imperceptibly. "But you came to my first professional fight anyway. Front row." She turned the page to a photograph of him watching her from ringside, his face a complicated mixture of pride and fear. The afternoon stretched on as Laila shared memories, filling the silence with stories they both knew by heart. The time she'd snuck out to a party at 16, the day she'd announced she was becoming a professional boxer, her wedding, the birth of her son, his grandson. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the porch, a question that had lingered in Laila's mind for years suddenly surfaced. "Daddy," she said softly, "I've been thinking about something. Through everything, all your fights, losing your titles, even when they took your boxing license away for refusing the draft, I've never seen you cry, not once." Muhammad's eyes fixed on the horizon, the golden light of sunset reflecting in them. "Why is that?" she pressed. "How did you stay so strong through everything, even now with this disease?" Her voice trailed off. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant calls of birds returning to their nests. Laila wondered if he'd heard her, or if he was lost in his thoughts, something that happened more frequently these days. Then, with tremendous effort, Muhammad raised his hand and placed it on her cheek. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Not," he began, his voice a harsh whisper, each word requiring monumental effort. "In front of my children." Laila felt her heart constrict. "What do you mean?" Muhammad took several labored breaths before continuing. "They already carry enough." The weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. All these years, she had interpreted his stoicism as inhuman strength, as the unshakable confidence of the greatest. But here was the truth. He had cried. He had suffered. He had felt fear and pain and uncertainty, just like anyone else. He had just never let his children see it. The realization crushed her. How many tears had he hidden? How many nights had he suffered alone, determined that his children should see only his strength? even now battling a disease that was slowly imprisoning him in his own body. He was trying to protect them from his pain. "But Daddy," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you don't have to be strong for me anymore. I'm grown now. I can handle it." Muhammad's eyes glistened in the fading light. "Old habits," he managed with the ghost of his famous smile. Laila wrapped her arms around him, holding him as tightly as she dared. For the first time, she felt the true burden her father had carried. Not just the physical punishment of the boxing ring, not just the political battles he had fought outside it, but the emotional weight of always being the rock for his family, no matter the personal cost. In the quiet of that moment, Laila understood something profound about strength. True strength wasn't about never breaking. It was about who you protected when you did. "It's okay to lean on me now," she whispered into his ear. "It's my turn to be strong for you." As night fell over the Ali estate, something shifted between father and daughter. Muhammad Ali, the man who had proclaimed himself the greatest, who had shaken up the world, who had stood against wars and governments and prejudice, allowed himself, just for a moment, to rest his head on his daughter's shoulder. The next morning, Laila woke early. She'd stayed the night, sleeping in her old bedroom that remained unchanged from her teenage years. She found her father already awake, sitting in his wheelchair by the window, watching the sunrise. She knelt beside him and took his hand. "I need to tell you something," she said. "All these years, I thought I needed to be as strong as you. I pushed myself to be undefeatable, unshakable, like you seemed to be." Muhammad watched her, his eyes attentive. "But now I understand that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about who you protect when you do. And Daddy, you've been protecting us all along." His fingers tightened around hers. "I won my fights in the ring," she continued, "but you've been fighting the harder battle, and I want you to know that you don't have to fight it alone anymore." A single tear escaped Muhammad's eye, tracking slowly down his cheek. Laila reached up and gently wiped it away, just as he had done for her countless times. "See?" She smiled through her own tears. The world didn't end. For the first time in her life, Laila saw her father cry, not the performative tears of public emotion, but the real, vulnerable tears of a man who had carried the weight of greatness for decades. And in that moment, Muhammad Ali wasn't the greatest boxer of all time. He wasn't the three-time heavyweight champion, or the Olympic gold medalist, or the civil rights icon. He was simply her father, a man who had loved his children enough to bear his pain alone, to preserve their faith in his invincibility even as his own body betrayed him. As Laila drove away from her father's estate later that day, she carried with her a new understanding of what it meant to be an Ali. The legacy wasn't about being unbeatable or fearless. It was about standing your ground when it mattered, fighting for what you believed in, and protecting those you loved, even from your own pain. 6 months later, when Muhammad Ali took his final breath with his family gathered around him, Laila held his hand and whispered, "It's okay, Daddy, we're strong enough now. You taught us how to be." In the years that followed, whenever Laila spoke about her father, she would tell the story of that afternoon on the porch, of the moment she realized that the greatest act of strength is sometimes allowing yourself to be vulnerable with those you love. "My father wasn't the greatest because he never cried," she would say. "He was the greatest because he carried so much for so long and never let us see how heavy it was." In boxing rings around the world, Laila Ali continued her father's legacy, fighting with the same grace and power that had made him legendary. But in her private life, she embraced a different lesson from Muhammad Ali, that true champions aren't those who never fall, but those who use their strength to lift others up. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone see your tears. If you made it this far and felt every word, don't leave without subscribing and commenting where you're watching from. If this touched you deeply, give back, comment, subscribe. Come be part of this family with me until the next video.